Live. Hello and welcome to Community Manager Live. I'm David Dewald, Community Manager at Sienna. Each week, we bring a collection of community and industry professionals together to discuss a topic suggested by our audience. If you would like to chat along with us today, you can join us on YouTube and LinkedIn, where we pull in your questions and comments right into our stream and just let us tackle them as they go along. We'd love you if you do that. Please do. You can find the links to all of that on Community Manager Live, cmgr.live. This week, we're going to be talking about events in the community industry. This is a collaborative project that Vinia put together with a bunch of YouTubers, and personality types. But first, we're going to go around the horn and we'll start with Carmen. Introduce us, basically say who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Thanks, David. So I'm Carmen. I am otherwise known as community coach, and I've been in the industry for 10 years. I'm Aussie, in case the accent didn't come through there, but I've worked for companies like Unity Technologies, building communities globally, and I'm obsessed with online communities. Got into Web3 a year ago and really started to deep dive into that as well, and started my YouTube channel a year ago, and really happy to be here.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, Tim McDonald. I am the head of community at Homeroom, where we are community management, SaaS and platform agnostic, and help build integrations and stack technologies for clients with their strategy and implementation of community to help align with their business goals. And I am in Tampa, Florida.
Jen?
Hello, beautiful humans. My name is Jen Janad. I am the host of a podcast called Shit You Don't Want to Talk About, where you bring up topics we don't want to talk about. Let's talk about it. And also the host of a live stream called Teach Gen Tech, where I'm learning tech live. It's been super fun. I also am a co-host of the Denver API Meetup and MC and at multiple conferences. The last one was Next Nation, which was phenomenal. And I'm also a developer relations, or as I like to say, developcado. And that one, I am actually looking for my next adventure.
Very cool. And Vinia?
Hello, my name is Samantha Venia Logan. I do go by Venia, and I run Socially Constructed Online. It is a online consultancy and also e-course training company, all about how to build online communities using the power of social science. And we do so iteratively. So we run it out of a Discord community, and we connect a whole bunch of stuff. And as a big part of making sure that this associative learning for online communities was shown and recognized and strong, I built Socially Constructed Online to do things like this with collaborations with other amazing YouTubers and influencers in the space.
Hey, Nima, thank you for joining us. You squeezed in a little late. If you would, just tell us who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Absolutely. It's great to be with all of you. Hi, everyone. My name is Niyama Sean. I am the founder of Outlier's Edge and the co-creator within the World of Difference movement. And that's really where I bring community together. We have a platform where we're really looking to see how can we bring out the differences that make everyone shine and bring it in a constructive way to be able to create from there. Most of the time, what I do when I'm not running community is I bring together people through coaching as well. So I'm looking forward to bringing both those perspectives to today's conversation.
Very good. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to put Vinia up here. She's the one that brought us all together to do this little magic thing. So if you would talk about you know what this is, what your concept was going forward, and what you were looking to achieve.
Sure. Yeah. So first, I want to say thank you so much, Jen, Carmen, and Niyama, for doing some absolutely amazing contributions. For those who are watching us or are live in the chat, we're going to actually post the amazing playlist to all of the great videos. But the reason this playlist exists in the first place is because events kind of went haywire. The thing that we shouldn't talk about, like COVID, just kind of happened. And we went from physical events running the entire world and being highly exclusive. And we had a well-greased engine and machine in the marketing and the operational aspect of it, all that, threw it out the window come 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we also kind of saw the rise of online community platforms because people started to notice the importance of community events and gathering in online community. But at the same time, we had a whole bunch of community managers who came in, didn't know how to run events. We had a lot of physical events trying to translate. There were a lot of things tried. So we ended up over the course of the past 2.5 years with this massive field of experimentation, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to run these events? And a lot of people had a lot of thoughts of like, this didn't really produce a lot of belonging. This is what I would have really liked in an event. So we went and we tried that. And they're like, okay, so that didn't really produce a lot of structure. So I had no idea what I was doing in the event. And now at the end of it all, we have physical events back. We went to CMX and a whole bunch of these other spaces. The Web3 space has also produced a whole bunch of physical events, which is its own burgeoning area now. And we have no idea at the end of it all where our experimentation was. So the whole point of this playlist was for us to kind of take a beat, take a moment and say, all right, people who have made these amazing events and done this amazing work, what did you think of it? Let's look back now. Let's come back to ground on what these events really mean. So I put together a whole bunch of amazing content creators and community leaders in the space to give us that perspective, give us that feedback. And in this conversation, I'm hoping that we can kind of play with a lot of those videos and a lot of those ideas to really come to ground on what events mean in online community now. That having been said, like that's what the playlist was for me. I would absolutely love to hear all of your perspectives since you ran these videos and you're running a lot of these online events. What has the past 2 years looked like for you? And what really encouraged you to engage in this playlist?
I'll go. First off, y'all, as a heads up, my video is not on the playlist, aka events got in my way. And this is a part of life that I'm starting to learn of. Going from like physical events, people just expect you to be really, really busy, especially during conference season. And they're like, oh, okay, no worries. It's probably not going to happen. Where now that it's become like virtual, there's much more like live streaming, which I stream live. I also do the podcast, and the podcast has just been, it's in limbo is the best way to say it. And then also of, showing up on Twitter Spaces or doing this type of thing. It's like feeling so much more connected, yet also feeling so much busier and having to explain a lot more and of why things are not getting done or not getting done. And also just still showing up because my pride was like, I'm not going to show up. I didn't get it done. I did not do the assignment. I did not. Yet I think that's just as important to show up and say, because this is what our life has morphed into of there's a lot more behind the doors, behind, it's very, very hidden. And we can be just as busy, yet it's harder to explain it to people unless we literally go, y'all, I messed up. I didn't get it done, but I'm still here because I still care about this community. And that's how it's shown up for me for the last 2.5 years. And also why there's a lack of video at the moment.
Yep. I was going to say, I just recently got back from my first live in-person event since before COVID hit. And it was great to actually see people face to face. And one of the, we talk about funny experiences here. One of the most remarkable things is I was surprised how tall and short people were, because right now, if you look at the screen, we're all the same height, right? Everybody looks the same height. I was expecting to look eye to eye to everybody because I've been doing it for 2 years, right? And I'd run into people and, sometimes literally because they were so short, I didn't see them. And there's other people that, I had to look up to, which is weird being 6'1". But it's that connection to be able to spend time with somebody, to shake their hand, give them a hug if that's appropriate, and just connect in that way that really I feel like we've lost in that it's that personal touch. You can do a little bit through video, but it's not quite the same. And it's, we love and want those human connections, and being in person, you pick up on so much more. I mean, you get some body language from this, but you can't see I'm talking with my hands because that's what I do. But you can't see it because it's below the screen, and you get all of that personality, and it shines through, and it builds connections, as I said. And I just really love that we're getting back to it. And I haven't been to a community conference in so long. It's crazy. And, I think this year is the year that I really jump back into it. So if you want to see me live and in person, I'll be around. And if you don't, I completely understand. So anybody else want to take a stab at this? Carmen?
Yeah. So for me, I actually had almost like the opposite experience. So the past couple of years of COVID were off the charts busy for me because everyone went online, and it was just insane. Like, everybody was reaching out to me. How do I go from physical events to online and creating connections that feel like, creating that sense of belonging, but we're on Zoom and it's 2D, and like David was mentioning, like, we can't even see each other's heights or hands. And so I always say that Zoom is actually, we're in the fax machine era. Like, it's like we're not quite at the level yet that we need to be at to have those connections online. And there's plenty of people building to make that happen. And I mean, I'm all for physical events. I think physical events are amazing as well. And I love a combination of both. But I'm also really passionate about online because I know there's a lot of people that can't afford to be in the room for various reasons. Like, they can't afford the flights I'm based in Singapore, and I see tons of amazing people in Web3 space that are based all around the world in countries that, generally speaking, are overlooked. And there's a lot of talent in those countries, and they may be restricted by only being able to attend events in their own country or in their own city. So for me, I was passionate about how do we get more people connecting in the room that should be connecting, and it's not because they can't afford to fly, or be in the event physically. So yeah, it's just, we'll get there.
And Carmen, it's interesting because I had just spent the last 4 years living in Singapore. So I'm like, oh, we missed each other while we were out there. Yeah. So that actually speaks to like some of the transitions for me here, because I moved back to the US, totally new area. But it was interesting being back in the US and seeing like how is community being done here. And with the nature of like the things that I was finding with community, I was actually spent a lot of time with community managers and people leading communities, not from this standpoint of like what's the external parts that they're creating, but like how difficult is it to, or like the challenges they were facing to both figure this out, but to be the person that was looked on and looked upon to figure it out. I think that there's just something we have as community managers that's just like, we give a lot, we're constantly trying to figure out something new and something new that we can offer to our communities. And from my standpoint, it was like really just taking some time to be with these different community leaders to like make sure that they themselves were taken care of. And that was a really, it's an important part of this year, right? We give, and it's like, who's filling our tanks and what do we need from there? So that was really where I was putting my attention to over the last 2 years. And interestingly, when I left Singapore, I came out here and I felt it myself, where it's like, oh, actually, I was very virtual in Singapore, and now I have the opportunity to come back and be in person, and I have to start a brand new system and new everything. How do I want to navigate that? And that internal part was just a big part of that journey.
And I
It's
think,
a good point. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I've been live streaming and everything for over 10 years, almost 15 years now. And, when in the early days, it was like hardly anybody was doing it. You got a lot of people focused on you. You brought a lot of people together. You could always make it engaging. And then, it was like, but live events were still going on and nobody was really merging the two together. There was a couple exceptions, but not too many. And then when COVID hit, it was like everybody needed to figure out how to do it virtually. And the problem that we're in now is that, and you guys have all brought, different aspects of this up, is people want to get back in person, but there's certain people that can't or aren't comfortable getting back in person. And so people that are running these events are trying to merge the two together. What they're not focused on is you need to not just take what you did before and what you've been doing the last 2 years and run those as individual things. You need to find a way to bring them together. And that is the one piece that I don't know why it's so difficult for people to figure out. It's not that hard. Why can't we do this? And it's just because I think people are too stuck on what they know and not focused on where they can go.
And almost like not focusing on what is the end goal, like what are we trying to achieve by hosting these events, right? Looking at the bigger picture.
And I'd go a little bit further than that, because I think a lot of people are like, what is the goal of this event? Okay, great. I've decided the goal of this event, without ever having realized that in community, it is about stakeholders who have base level conflicts with one another, and making sure that those goals that do ultimately end up conflict are understood well enough that you can find a way to fuse simpatico. So in some cases, like for instance, a typical TED Talk, a TED event, they want to produce content that ends up as talks that go onto YouTube channels. So there's this long-term content factor, and TED expects sponsors to come in and pay for those conversations to occur, but they also expect for the speakers to take the top minimum. How many goals did I just mention in that? Like 5, maybe 6 different goals. And a lot of those do conflict, but in a lot of ways, we try to prioritize those goals instead of trying to find a way to collaborate and discuss them to produce new aspects of events. I think we are kind of making our decisions before we really should be.
I think that's a good point. And to Tim's point, I think that there's a gap that still needs to be covered, where if you're virtual at a virtual event that's also live, you are kind of you're neglected. Your voice isn't heard as much. And I know that, before the time of COVID, early days of Twitter, when we had events, they would do Twitter walls, right? Mm-hmm. And pull in the chat and information. And like here, I can do this. I can say, Jen replied to somebody. I can pull it in, put it on screen if they have a question. Sorry, I pulled you out there.
No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful because that's what happens. So you instinctively knew.
Yeah. Right. So, and if someone has a question, we can pop it up on screen and we can take it real time, and nobody is doing that. Even though platforms that seem to be built for that, right, that are built for that online hybrid, they don't have anything like that going on. And it's a missed opportunity because, I could just watch it later. I don't need to watch it live, because me being live doesn't impact anything that's going on.
Well, my point to what you just said, David, is they're saying that they can do this, but can they actually do it?
Right.
I don't think there's a community platform out there that can do it successfully for that intent purpose.
There are, there's an 800-pound gorilla in the event space that can do it. And they do it with their events, but nobody that's running a community these days has that kind of budget, unless it's rolled into the greater marketing org of a large company. But like I said, they can do it. And there's, I've seen, like I said, early days of Twitter, and when doing these kind of events, there would be the person on stage, there would be 2 screens on the side, and they would be running a Twitter feed. And admittedly, Twitter's not exactly the same place it was a month ago. We'll just say that it's a little different today than it was a month ago. But you could put some filters in there to catch some of the stuff that you don't want to get streamed up there, but there's no reason why, messages and comments and feedback can't be pulled on screen, or even, hey, we have a question from the online crew. And I see people do that manually. Like there's some, guy off in the corner. Zona, glad you're here with us. So yeah, see, I can do that. I can see Zona said, glad to be here. Cool space. I can respond to them and, include them. And now, they don't have to watch the video later. They're a part of it and, can join in. And I feel like that's the piece that is direly needed, is to bring me in. Otherwise, I'm just watching a video. It happens to be live, but I'm just watching a video and I'm not part of it. And I feel no connection to you. If I ask a question, is it going to be answered? Are they even going to know I asked a question? I just don't know. So.
Yeah. And for my part as well, I kind of mentioned this, but Carmen actually went really in depth on it because it's such a critical and important aspect, especially in Web3 communities that started online, that focused on decentralization and focused on removing sense of power from stakeholders as a base level. Her video goes into this a lot. But one of the things that I really, really struggle with is this concept that in a virtual world, our stages need to be Carnegie Hall. They don't. We don't need to have a stage, lavish curtains, beautiful Baroque design from 1920s, 9 different balconies, all made pitch black because the only light needs to be for the people on the stage. And as a YouTuber, as a speaker, as someone who loves to fill a room, this is really handy for me, right? I cannot tell you how many public speeches I've done this year, how many podcasts I've run and stuff like that. But I hesitate to say that's healthy for community. I think that especially in a virtual space, we need to start reducing the amount of time that individual speakers might speak, 10 minutes, maybe get your message across, and then start polling the audience, because there are so many experts in chat who aren't talking because it's not their stage to talk. There are so many beginners in our space who are looking at things and going, why is that the way that it is? Why don't we just do this? And it's genuinely a really good idea. There are so many people who have this expertise, but don't have the stage to present it because it's on us for having structured it that way.
I think it's, I was just going to say, it's just kind of like, content, right? It's like, do we want people to co-create content, or do we want people to consume content? And that's really the basics of what we're talking about here, right? In events.
Right.
I think that's something, though, that is so ingrained in the event area, whether it be online or on stage, is the fact that it's very one-sided. It's one to many. And honestly, this is, to your point about being a YouTuber and stuff, this is why I love to stream, is it's not one to many. It's very, very interactive. This is why I personally love to MC instead of speak, because then I actually do get to interact with people, because I lose my train of thought a lot of times. And I'm like, but if I look at somebody and say, you got questions? It keeps it going. And it's that dynamic of needing to change the entire thing and being also open as event holders to changing it and bringing up these ideas, because we are going against, pre-COVID, this was what, forever event knowledge. Like, I can't even say when the first conference was. It was forever of the way of doing it. So unless it was specifically a town hall, which makes me think of the British people, and they are with all the fancy dudes and having to take times and saying here, and that was the only time you ever got interaction. So I question to all of us is, how do we start talking about that interaction and being a part of changing that dynamic when it is online and offline and both? And as you were talking about the Twitter wall, yes, that there's that way, but if questions aren't accepted or going to be talked to, a lot of keynotes don't have Q&As.
Yeah, my plan is to make this a road show. Whenever there's a new community event that's coming up, it's I'm going to submit to be a speaker, and instead of doing a normal kind of thing, it'll be one of these but live, where I'll get some of the other hosts that are already there, and we'll get up on stage, we'll throw up a screen, I'll start this up, somehow, some way, work it out. And then literally they can interact, they can ask questions, and I can pull them up, and it'll be this community manager live, live in person, a double live, two live. It'll be a two live crew. All right, that was a bad reference.
What you're describing, David, is, I used to run unconferences, community
Exactly.
manager unconferences.
Yes.
And every Friday at 2 p.m., just like we do this show, I was running a community manager hangout. And I happened to do one in Chicago, a community manager unconference at Google's office. And what we did is we had a screen up there, and we actually did the community manager hangout in front of the room at the unconference. And so everybody in the room, everybody that was watching on screen, was participating and engaging with each other. And that's exactly what we're talking about. This is talking about 12 years ago. Why are we sitting here today and haven't been able to figure it out? I don't get it.
I kind of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Carmen. I'd love to hear what you said, and I'll add on top of that.
For me, it's actually it's more about the end goal, right? So, I mean, I've also hacked things together at physical events where I've got a projector screen and projected Slack, which was the platform that was the online thing at the time, and showed online conversations happening, literally on a wall projected. But to me, it's not oh, okay, well, that's not perfect, therefore it's not acceptable. At the end of the day, it achieved the goal of bringing virtual and physical. And I'm more obsessed with the experience for the people that are attending, whether it's online or in the room, versus let's focus on getting the perfect platform, because I think all of us know when it comes to community anyway, is there a perfect platform? So yeah, go ahead.
I just want all of us to take credit for what we've done and what we do, because when we say we threw something up or we hacked something together, it took effort and planning and thought to make those things come to reality.
Not to mention red tape.
Yes.
And being okay with it not being perfect, because that is hard to get through.
That's true. Yeah, you have to fight a lot. I remember when I hate panels, I'm really anti the whole putting 3-4 chairs on stage and then people in the audience. And there was one event where I was I cracked it, and I just took all the chairs off the stage and put it in the middle of the room, and then changed the seating. So it was everybody sat around, and then just felt way more interactive. And people walked in the room going, wait, what is this? What's happening? Why are the chairs not on the stage? And people freaking out in the company. But I was this is what we're doing. We've got to do something different.
Carmen, to your point here, I think this is what that element of we got to do something different, I think, is where it starts. And I hear you say in terms of the goals, Tim, I hear you say why aren't we doing this? I also heard you say that you've been doing this for 15 years, right? So you were doing this before. And so for you to be still here, I'm Tim has figured out how to figure things out, right? And from when I I'm interacting with a lot of other community managers, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling under-supported, they're feeling under-resourced, and it's okay, I would love to do all these things, and I actually think that there's a thing that we have where we bring so many new experts onto the field that it's almost I need to do this. I need to have something virtual. I need to have something in person. I need to figure all these things. It's just me by myself, and my job, or the mission that I have out in the world to be supported is on the line with this year. So I love hearing what you said, Carmen, where you're I know the goal. The goal here is for real interaction and being on stage with the panel. That's what people do. That's what people have done. But for me personally, as Niyama Ashang, I'm over expertise. I'm I get it. I can Google, right? What I'm looking for now is experience. I'm looking to be able to sit down in the room with a small group of people and be able to talk about what are you doing? How am I here's what's happening for me, and to build community in terms of smaller tight-knit groups, units, as opposed to looking at a few people who have the answers and then looking at. So that's part of my goal when it comes to community. My goal is to say, how can I get the people in here to unlock the gifts that they have to contribute? And then that changes and sets the shape and the design of the experience. The last thing I'll say here, because I want to open it up for what this might bring up in others, is the word simplicity, and like I'll be honest, because Jen opened the honesty doors. So I'll be honest. I came and I was making my video, and I watched all the videos that were happening that were already in the playlist, and they were amazing. Like I was watching, I was like, I can't wait to implement a lot of these myself. And then I started getting into my own head around like, oh, well, like this person has like background graphics, and this person has this going on, and this like there's side, like, I mean, these are really well crafted videos. Like if you haven't watched it yet, I definitely recommend go to this playlist, spend the time with it. But then I started comparing myself, and I lost my like the real true line for me, like what really mattered. And it really brought me back to this place of like, what is simplicity for you? Like, what are like the 2 or 3 key things that like, if you do this, everything else will like, you'll get 80% of the way there, so that you can have the bandwidth and the freedom to like see what else can be made in that last 20%. So I'll put this into the space here. I'll be curious about how you all like respond to this here. Challenge me, uplift it. But I'm really curious what comes up from there.
Well,
You stunned us all. No, I mean, there was a moment. There was a moment when you said simplicity, and it looked like we were in the, a bobblehead on the front end of a Chevy. We were all going like this, at the same time. I think simplicity is just as you said. I do just want to show. Tim was talking about back in the day doing a live session. I just want to show you. There you go. He has absolutely done this before. So. That was the live conference on Google Plus back in the day, and just we can do it. There's ways. So,
and I think I was thinking as you're talking there, like I think events, for the most part, event organizers are always focused on how do we get the most people in the room. And what I've heard from almost everybody here, and what you're kind of challenging me on, is like, maybe it's not the number that we have, but the quality of the people that we have and how much they're participating in that. And maybe we don't need to make all events virtual. Maybe we don't need to make all events hybrid. Maybe we don't need to make all events, in person. But that's the thing about community isn't open up for everybody. It's only open up for an exclusive group of people. I mean, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that in a very shared purpose-driven way. Mm-hmm. And when you have that, you don't need to make your events so that everybody can attend.
Agreed.
It's not about that. It's about what, and I know we're talking a lot about what the goals are and everything else, but you can have an event and imagine how many people would want to be there if it was like an in-person event that wasn't going to be broadcast everybody, wasn't going to have recordings, I know everybody's going to want that, right? But imagine the draw and the amount of people that truly want to participate in this, that would actually attend an in-person event if you didn't open it up or have recordings for everybody to watch later.
I agree.
Intentional.
Yeah, during my time in COVID.
Did you visit COVID?
It felt like a job. It certainly felt like a job.
Actually, that's a really good translation to what I was actually going to say. At the start of COVID, I worked for a company called Keystone Symposia on molecular and cellular biology. So I was their community manager and digital marketer. And my job was to help them run 65 physical events all over the world among scientists, about 300 per session, about all things biology. So the idea was for newcomers to come and present their theses as peer review process, and for mentors to find the new people in the space and get connected, and for people to present brand new, yet to be peer reviewed science, so that it could start the peer review process. Super critical, very, very important, really, really mattered who was in the room, right? Because we needed those people who are on the bleeding edge, but hadn't yet made it across that fame marker. And then we also needed the people who had made it across that fame marker and were definitely movers and shakers in the space, so that they could pay attention to one another. And when COVID happened, we had to translate 65 physical events for peer-reviewed scientific knowledge about biology, of which infectious disease was one of them, into an online space. And it almost immediately became, who is the biggest mover and shaker that we can get to speak at the keynote? We're going to sell tickets based upon that fact. And this notion of mentorship, connection, community interaction, and development didn't make it into these hobbled together virtual spaces. The best that we could do was produce a very 1990s bulletin board style system for these online events. And we actually took stats on how quickly conversations petered out and how well the newcomers in the space were doing. Our answer was, well, if infectious disease isn't getting people to stay at these virtual events, then maybe we just need to have more of them, 5 of them, 6 of them in any given year. And quickly, 65 events, which is nothing to sneeze at, became more than that, 117 events across 3 different formats. That didn't solve their problem, though. They had removed this concept of community from this highly exclusive, very important space. And yet at the same time, we did, by the numbers at least, have a huge amount of scholarship recipients. We had a huge amount of people engaging in these virtual events that would not otherwise have been able to attend at all. And we were just looking at these ticket prices as if to sell the people at the top. We had the people coming, we just weren't engaging them.
It's such a good point around, like, is an event going to actually be the right thing to do as well? Like, I think a lot of people that, especially if they're new to community or they don't really understand community, they revert to let's have an event, you know, whether that's virtual or physical, but it feels like, let's do something. Let's like get the ball rolling without stopping to think, is that actually what we need to do here? Like, is the event going to solve the bigger goal of whatever it is that people, why they're joining this community, right? And why they're here. So yeah, I think we've also got to like dial it back and be like, okay, is the event the right medium for what we need to be doing?
Yeah, and kind of following up on that, there is kind of a happy ending in that regard, where the proposed solution was for us to not have an event necessarily, and to just take all of the new students and ask them to put together 3 slides, one for need, plan, and practicality for their experiment, publish that as a single tweet, and then run tweet threads where we had what was effectively a mini presentation conference.
I love that.
Great idea.
Does anybody else just enjoy Venya talking because of all the like very, very like educational high level content? I'm always like, that's so cool.
For sure.
Back to the idea of
there are moments when she makes me feel like Forrest Gump. I am not a smart man. You know,
maybe not that part, but
she hits some jargon sometimes, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to look that one up later. You know,
agreed. I will say that
that's her stick, though. You know, she comes from a scientific point of view. That's what makes her. So
yes. Back to the simplicity question. I think it's something that, at least coming from a background of when COVID hit, I was interning as a videographer because I was like, I want to do that when I grow up. I want to make videos and community for human connection, and I have to be a videographer. You don't. In case anybody wants to know, you don't. With my background in tech, I was in account management. I was thrown into being the person in charge of digital conferences. It was a nightmare. And it was a common time. And it was when all of COVID, people were learning, and these giant corporations were paying this very, very small boutique production studio to make these digital conferences. And it really inspired, I'm going to paste this link in here, inspired this article that I finally wrote of just saying, fuck it. Because in the art of honesty and all of that that's the simplest form we can go to of like, Carmen, when you were talking about going to just making a room to create more of that connection, In my mind, that is a really good way of saying, fuck it, everybody. We're going to make people talk. Put them in the room. And I think that's where, to everyone's point of how we are moving from what is the goal of it, and should we have virtual and hybrid, or hybrid and, in person? Or I know that, at least for me, there's been events where I've met Venya at, and I'm like, I don't really want to go, especially if Venya's not there, because I don't want to put out that much energy to talk to everybody. I'm only going for specific people. And I think that's also a really big gauge that we need to be able to, if I were like the one in charge of an event, I might be like, okay, how am I going to make Jen talk to Tim? Like, they're not talking yet. Why are they not talking yet? Like, and actually gauge and look at the interaction of the community. And I think that's something that is in person or online is also something not always thought about, is how do we unclick the click?
I spoke about that.
Mic drop.
Yeah, total mic drop. Where's the sound effects in this platform?
There are some. You don't want me to do that, though.
That'll take up the next 20 minutes.
So,
What do you think? What was coming for you?
go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, I spoke about that to Jen's point in my video as well, around like building events for everybody that is in the room, like thinking about the types of people that are attending, and like introverts. And I'm actually an ambivert. I think apparently majority of community builders are ambiverts, or they definitely understand, like introverts and extroverts. And I see it all the time in physical events, where you'll have the people that they walk in very confident and they just roll up to like a group of people and they're just like, hey, like, I'm Carmen, let's do this, let's connect. And then there's other people that you can just see, it's almost like the dread on their face of, oh my God, I have to go and talk to people, and okay, there's the bar, grab a drink. And then they kind of look awkward because they don't really know what to do, before the event officially starts, for instance. And I think it would be awesome if we could see more around, okay, how do we encourage people to feel more comfortable no matter who they are and what their personality is like.
I'm curious how like y'all have been going about that in your events nowadays. Like when you say this, Carmen, what comes to mind is for me, I think about like counterintuitive agreements. So one of the things I do with my events is like we'll come up not with ground rules, but we'll find like some agreements that we'll take on in that space. And as you say this right now, one of the ones that comes to my mind that I love is like, let's be here to serve rather than please. And we'll set something here where it's like, okay, let's like in this space. Yeah, I'm seeing some snaps, Jen, so I'm taking that in, seeing the venue. But like, there's an element of like creating a distinction of like, hey, this is how the rest of the world is. But now that you've entered into this space, like these are the rules that we play with. And I found like, I call them agreements, but like whatever those new rules of order are that they can agree into has been something that has gotten people to play a different way. It's like, hey, come in here, choose the opposite. Whatever the opposite is for the next hour. If you're usually the person up front, sit back. You like whatever it is. So I'd be curious how some of y'all have found different ways to change up that space.
Well, I mean, I think I learned this when I was back in sales, right? And I was always told, I'm going to date myself now, like, look at what's in their ashtray on their desk. Is it a cigar? Is it a cigarette? Look at the books on their shelf. Look at their diplomas. Look at their trophies. Look at their pictures. Were they golfers? Were they fishermen, men or women? I try not to use men all the time now, but it's like, what connection could you make with that person that got you to start building a foundation of trust? And once you were able to do that, then you could get into what you were there for, right? And I think that's what made me a great community person. Is I used to, and I still do, and I've done this especially at the beginning of COVID when I was helping run a lot of events online. It was who's in the comments that the typical thing, like when all this started, right, was tell us where you're watching from. And everybody would type in the chat on Zoom, here's where you're from. Well, I would look at that person, and if they weren't engaging and weren't communicating with everybody else that was in the comments, I would pay attention to where they were from. I'd notice where somebody else was from, and I'd be like, hey, do you two know each other? Or, did you both work in this industry? Did you know that, did you guys know each other from this world? And it's like, how do you help facilitate those connections? And I do this in person, it's a lot easier, right? I always look for the person who's standing alone and then go up and talk to them. And then all of a sudden we start getting a group around us, and they're part of the group now, instead of being that solo person that's outside of the group. And it's like, it's just this fun way of doing it, but you can do it online and you can do it in person. And it's just a matter, in my way, it's a matter of finding those people that aren't participating and figuring out a way of how you get them participating, even if that means that you need to be the facilitator of that, and the forcing that connection to happen. That's what gets those people to feel like they're part of something bigger than just themselves.
Yeah. And I also learned at All Things Open, I'm actually about to have a conversation with someone at All Things Open specifically because of this. They have, at the end of every speaker block, they have this like panel discussion situation where they're like, okay, we're going to pull some people from the audience now. And sometimes it's on the main stage of the event. Sometimes it's just pulled aside for future content. But they actually say, takeaways can't just be the expectation of stakeholders. We need to actually ask the audience, what was the value that you got out of these talks? And it kind of gives them a stage too, right? And they call them these like birds of a feather stages, where it's like, these people are very similar and they're very connected. So like, let's have them talk about the content that they just experienced in a very experiential way, and then make that a report out of some form of content. I think it's a really, really great way to engage when you're stuck in this format of speaker and audience. Making audience members build a second stage elsewhere is a really, really great way to at least refresh that format,
I like hearing what you're saying here, because it's taking me to some of the community experiences I got to have, the events that I got to be a part of, where I attended virtually. But they created it like their own virtual, like a new experience for the virtual, right? So like sometimes we think about like, how can we just make it so that everyone has the same experience? We're kind of watering down everything across the way. Like I oftentimes will like be like, what's the experience for in person? What's the experience for virtual? And then when we have our group experiences, the virtual people have done something different. So I'm sitting here, I actually have around my desk, a bunch of things that the community I was a part of, they sent us a physical like box, and we would go and open up various things throughout the process there. And then when people went out to lunch, we had like a quest that we had to do that no one else was doing, so it was like it was things that you were doing on the virtual things where everyone else might have been going out to lunch and eating with each other, but you were building upon something that kept you still engaged. But you were having your own adventure, and the people who were there live just didn't have that experience. So as you're talking about this, Venia, what comes to mind is like, where are the places where people have actively said, if you're not here, this will be your journey, and here goes where things overlap. But if you're in person, this will be your journey. And I think that sometimes, I know myself, I've gotten caught in it, where it's like, let me build one thing, and then try and find like the equivalent of it. It showed up when I was working in a tech company. I was looking at the communities of all of our different offices across the globe. And it's been years since, but I'll never forget like this one quote that came from like a satellite office or a different office there. And one of the offices was like, well, if you're not in headquarters, one day we'll just randomly get a cake, because y'all have decided that the in-person event, which is headquarters, would be like, that's the main thing. You're celebrating someone's birthday or celebrating like, but for us, it's just kind of like, thanks for the random cake. It's like, how can we actually instead like empower them to have their own experience based on where they are? And that has been translated into like, it's just a different environment. Let's not pretend that it isn't. And how do we actually like create something wonderful for that virtual experience, so that people in person are actually jealous of those who were virtual, and the people on virtual are like, oh, I didn't get that experience, but I had a completely different adventure. So thanks for bringing this up for me right now.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like crazy icebreakers as well at the beginning of virtual events. So like one event that we did, we had a teacher that teaches virtual reality, and she's an extrovert in the community, and she got up on stage as like the icebreaker, like literally the start of the show. You know, like that awkward time where you're waiting for the live to start. She rapped about teaching VR to a song, and she did a different song each live event. And people would turn up early to the live event session to make sure that they didn't miss her rap. And I feel like, you know, like these things, and it was such a unique experience for everybody that was virtual all around the world, loved it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of Tony Blank at Orbit. He did a thing where whenever he built a lot of organizational content, he would make sure that there was always a musician and a comedian that was always attending the event, just to be like the residential fun. And before and after the events, they would have time to just riff, just do whatever they want. It could be a song that they had already developed. It could be something different. And he brought this into the virtual space for Orbit Nexus last year, where he just did like this super cringy, it was cringy on purpose, guitar song for the event. And it kind of became like one of the bigger highlights.
And I think sometimes it's not always about like entertaining too, right? Like I've been on ones where at the beginning where you're meeting a bunch of people for the first time, it's like, as the host, it's a little awkward because you're going to be there by yourself, but you ask people to go get something like their favorite snack, you know, their, you know, a favorite piece of clothing or something, you know, I mean, whatever it is. So they're physically getting up from their camera, their computer, going downstairs or into a different room, pulling all this stuff together and then coming up, and then everybody gets to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that gets right back to my thing of like, how do you connect with people? It's based upon what your likes are and what you enjoy eating and what you enjoy doing. And you can't usually do that online, but there are ways you can do that. And it just takes that thought and that kind of, you know, I always remember, you know, I forget I'm going to butcher the saying, but it was something like the only thing you need to do to stand out is do something that not everybody else does.
Yeah. It's very true. I want to jump back a little bit. We had a mention of side quests and we had a mention of icebreakers. And I want to pull in Carolyn of Bad Axe Media and just share this with you because it covers kind of both. So we're going to see.
I'm a community nerd, so I want to help facilitate these deeper conversations and maybe more interesting and unexpected interactions. So what I did is I typed up a bunch of side quests on a piece of paper, cut them out in their little individual strips. I'm going to have those in my pocket at the event. So each side quest is a person to find. And the side quests are not necessarily based on my pre-research of any people that might be coming to the event, but you absolutely could do them this way. They're more based on conversation sparks. So they are like interesting conversations that I think people could have that will help them connect on a deeper level, like find their similarities, their differences, things like that, in interesting ways. So here are some examples of ones that I wrote up. Find someone who can tell you about a band you've never heard of. Find someone with the same number of siblings as you. Find someone who overcame a fear recently. Find someone who's celebrating a big milestone this year, right? Like those are not really worky related, although like milestone or big fear or some of the other ones could be, but they invite people to have these sort of human to human conversations, not as much business to business, which I think the human-to-human conversations result in much more meaningful business connections later down the road.
I think that's a great point. She covered very well.
Yeah. And for those who are listening or watching after the fact, Carolyn is actually a part of the playlist as well. So we've gone ahead and added that video to the playlist.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to pull it in. I think it fit in right with what we were talking about. And I was able to pull it up and be really techie and make myself look really special there. But it was crazy behind the scenes. We'll just say that.
And you don't have to make yourself look it. We already know you're special. Like, that's why you're here. Is I think community people like honestly make us so special, and we need to stop downplaying ourselves for that, because we a lot of times are in-betweeners. And yes, some of us may have to get on stage and rap to be able to, and people may look at us, but a lot of times we fall between the cracks. And I just want to say, David, like, you're a badass, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for being here, because like we all got our own kind of special. And that just reminds me of like going to the simple, like, oh, you guys you're in my head now.
Well, there's an old quote that I always will misdo because I don't have it memorized, but it's something to the effect of, when you have a large group of people and you're on stage and you're talking to them and you really want to hammer home building greater connectivity, is you look at the audience, you say, okay, look at the person on your left, looking at the person on your right. They know something and they are smarter about something than you are. 100%. They know more about it than you do. It's up to you to figure out what that is, right? And even on this, I mean, each of us have hobbies and skills and things that, we don't know. You don't know that, I can look at Carmen's background and say, oh, that's a very modern now. It's synthwave, but it's throwback from the early British wave, second wave, coming in during the 80s when we had the synth pop music that became very popular. And we can, so I have that in common with her. I can look at that and say, I know what that is. And, I am in a room that you can't see it because I have a background up, but I am surrounded by video game stuff. And I don't talk about it a lot in person because it's kind of my hobby. It's my thing. But I could talk your ear off about it because I've been playing video games since there were home video games, since the beginning. But it's up to you. I know. It's up to you. I'm just meeting Jen for the first time today. Actually, to make this simpler, I know Tim, I know Vinia. The rest of you guys are new to me. And I have no idea what your full expertise is in community, and where you got that expertise or how you got to this point. And that's a long conversation that we could have at some point. Or even, if bite-sized chunks, maybe I'll get it in 5-minute stints along the way. But, taking the time to learn, to figure out what they're smarter than you about is, I think, a very powerful thing that can change a view. I'm the old guy here. No offense to Tim, who's probably beat me by a couple of years, but community management wise, I've been doing it for a long time. I am the old guy, the OG, I hate to say that, of community, because I've been doing it since the 90s, online, professionally, building communities. And I'm out here with people younger than me that are teaching me things. Carmen's a deep dive on Web3. Tim has experience with Web3. I'm not a fan, but that doesn't mean I can't learn. I can absolutely learn from you guys because it's different tech. And, maybe I don't like it because I don't understand it and I'm old and get off my lawn. It's hard, so I can't do it anymore. And maybe it's just me that I need to overcome that. But
equally, I would say that I could learn a lot from you, David. Even
No.
in Web3, we could learn a lot from the OGs.
There's knowledge to be shared everywhere, though. And that's why I do this, is because I get to talk to people who are potentially smarter than me at something. And I get to learn too. Sometimes there's a little falsehood going on where I play dumb with some of these topics because I want my guests to have more airtime and share their expertise. And, maybe they'll have a turn of phrase or a way of explaining it that is better than the way that I would explain it. And I can learn, and then that makes me a better person when I, share my knowledge later. And they'll give me cases and instances where they've applied stuff that I haven't done. And I can say, well, I know someone who did it this way. More importantly, it allows me to say, next time somebody says, hey, I'm looking for somebody that can help me with Web3 and community, and maybe how we can incorporate video into that. And I can say, let me tell you about Carmen. She's a community coach. She can help you out. She's done the video YouTube thing. She's in Web3, and she can take you along for that ride and explain it. You really want to dig deep on the science behind community? let me tell you about Venia, and she will dig in deep for you, way deeper than I ever will be able to do. And she backs it. She doesn't tell you something unless she knows there's some science behind it, which is something I can't do. I'm very, well, when I did it, it worked this way, kind of a deal. Because, we didn't have science back when I started. We were just winging it all the time. And actually, a good example of just winging it is how Twitter is going these days, right? It feels like all of the community building and moderation stuff are up in the air, and we're watching somebody learn in real time how your decisions can affect how your community exists and live in the world, and how other people look at it and perceive it. But I'm on to rambling now, so I'm going to shut up and let somebody else talk.
Well, we're just at our time, David.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, I
thought you were just like gracefully closing us out, because I was like, damn, that is a good closer.
My key take. Oh, thank you, Dave Coleman. Yes. Forrest Gump is the baddest.
Hilarious.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Zona, for joining us today. Thank you, Jeffrey, as well. I normally have a nice big exit talk, but I'm not going to do it today. So what we're going to do, since we're kind of at time, is let's go around the horn again. But this time, it's your time to shine. So plug how people can find and connect with you, your YouTube channels for sure, since we're all YouTubers. Just we'll start with Niama. Did I say that right? I keep saying it wrong.
You did say it, and I would say from a place of belonging, I'm very glad that you went for it, regardless you got it right or wrong. Just the fact that you said it really hits me. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No,
I'm one
I
of
used
those
to go.
people, though. No offense to Dave, who's in the community, but if down here, he's still got his text up here. Don't call me Dave. Call me anything but Dave, and I embrace it, Dave. I'm glad you're Dave, because I don't want to be Dave. But I appreciate you having the grace to not correct me live on screen. But
so you want to know about what it is that's happening in my world right now, and how people can come in and be a part of the community now? Is that
so really, this is your chance to share your YouTube channel. Tell everybody here and everybody that watches later on how they can learn more about you, how they can connect with you, and how they can be a part of your world, basically.
Awesome. So I'm excited for this, because I'm excited to be in part of every one of your worlds here as well. So I'm looking forward to this here. The simplest way to stay in connection with me is to find me at Niama Shang on basically every profile there is. So it's got my YouTube handle, feeling great about that. It's also at Niama Shang. That's NIAMAH ASHONG. And then if you're interested in way I'm building community right now is really creating smaller, intimate experiences where people get a chance to be with one another and leverage the simplicity of virtual to create connection over and over and over again. And I'm doing this through the World of Difference movement. So if you're interested in being a part of that, if you're interested in bringing something that is different about you to create a different world or co-create a different world together, that's what's lighting me up. That's where I'm putting all my energy in right now. You can go to niama.com/WOD, as in World of Difference. And that's the best way to continue the conversation and to be in community with me. Looking forward to seeing and spending time with you there.
Thank you very much. Jen.
Niama, we got to be friends, because you didn't get to hear the first part. Is I have a podcast called Shit You Don't Want to Talk About, and it's to make this kind of change. That being said, I am going to make a side request. If Zona is still here, Zona, go put your information in the chat. Zona has created an amazing Discord that just keeps growing in community, and I honestly just love seeing people do that, because one thing y'all will learn is, as Venia taught me, there are a couple different types of community people, and I am a bridger. So by that being said, I don't stay in the same space very well and I'm going to be all over the board, talk to everybody, forget a bunch of stuff, which we already talked about a bit. Yet the big thing that you will always hear from me is honesty. And also talking about the real shit, is meaning that I talk about mental health and diversity. On Wednesdays, I host a Twitter space at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. CET, where so many people join in. And it's a very, like, if you are neurodiverse, great. If you just want to learn about neurodiversity, great. I also have Teach Gen Tech, which I stream 1 to 4 times a week. And the easiest way just to find me is just go to my Twitter. Or if you don't have Twitter, go to teachgentech.com. And it's Gen with 2 N's, because y'all, I do a lot of crazy stuff all the time. So just come hang out with me and I'll take you on the wild ride.
I guess I'm next. Thanks, Jen. That was awesome. I'm totally going to be listening to your podcast, by the way. Yes, so you can find me at Community Coach Carmen on YouTube. I'm really obsessed with, like, what is the future of community? Where are we heading? And I think that's why I've deep dived into Web3, because I think that there is new people that are entering the community space with new ideas, new concepts, or maybe not even that new concepts, but they're just willing to experiment. And that's exciting to someone like me to see what happens. And so I talk about what are the new things that are going on in community on my YouTube channel. And you can also find me at Twitter, and my handle is at a community coach on Twitter.
Vinia.
Yeah, and I first want to say I am so happy that you've all met, especially Nima and Jen. I knew that you two would kind of kick it off, which is really, really wonderful. I also adore Shit to Talk About. I highly recommend it. That having been said, I have a YouTube channel. That's like why we're here. There's a lot of playlists going on, and I strongly recommend looking into Socially Constructed Online, where you can find this amazing and incredible playlist. I want to highlight all of the awesome influencers, and some of them actually couldn't be here for this day. Bad Axe Enterprises and Carolyn is a visuals, really, really awesome works in the tech space. And then there are also like the bigger, more well-known ones like Jono Bacon and Carrie Melissa Jones. I think it's so important that if we're going to have a discussion on YouTube and on any community about building strong communities and creating a better virtual world, we really need to be hearing from all of these various different walks and voices. So if I can take part in bringing it all together for you, I would absolutely love to be a part of that. But if you also want to be a part of this conversation, we want to highlight you as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to me on YouTube, on Twitter, in my Discord, on YouTube. I mentioned YouTube twice for a reason. Be sure to subscribe and look at all of these incredible influencers.
Yeah, and thank everybody for tuning in today. It's been so enjoyable getting to meet some new people and see some people I know. But again, my name's Tim, at TA McDonald on Twitter. You can find me Tim A. McDonald on LinkedIn. McAdoo86, MCADOO86 on YouTube is my handle. And don't forget to go over to Community Manager Live and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, so David doesn't have to say that. And I cannot wait to check out all your guys' amazing work and stay connected with you. And I invite you, because it's something we're doing here and something I'm doing for our company site. But if you have any predictions for 2023 in the community space, send them my way, because we want to get them out there.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm David Dewald. I'm historian just about everywhere. LinkedIn, Twitter, actually on YouTube, I'm David Dewald on my personal account. There's nothing there. Everything's on here in Community Manager Live. The playlist of all the videos in this series are located in the description below on YouTube. And we have some that aren't posted yet. Once those get posted, I'll add them there. But I also have the main playlist that Vinia has, and she will probably add them there as well. So if I don't get them on the page, you can hit that playlist and find them all. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. I will be here next week. It's going to be a totally casual show. I'm going to probably pop up something like Jackbox, and we'll play some games and just chill if you want to come out and join. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.